Hi everyone, I'm Leah, I'm 31. I've started this video probably 6 times, deleted it 5 times, so bear with me if I get something wrong, or if I have to stop for a second. I'm doing this anyway, because 2 years ago my dad called me crying from a storage unit, and I think I've been waiting my whole life for that phone call without knowing it. For most of my life, I thought I was the problem. I thought grief had just warped my memory, made me see things that weren't there. Or that I was 9 when my mom died, so maybe I just didn't remember things right. I want to tell you I was wrong about that. I wasn't wrong about anything. My mom was Carol Ann Calloway. She died of ovarian cancer when I was 9. She was 34. I don't have a lot of memories of her well. Mostly I remember her in a robe at the kitchen table, mug of chamomile tea, half watching some cooking show she never actually paid attention to. She just liked the noise. She used to braid my hair on Sunday mornings, hum something I never recognized, and I'd just sit there. That's the memory I keep coming back to, honestly. Not anything she said, just that feeling of being completely safe. She died on a Thursday. It rained, which, I know, that sounds like something out of a movie, but it's just true. My dad fell apart. I don't say that as a criticism. He loved her completely, they'd been together since college, and when she was gone, he genuinely didn't know how to exist anymore. So he worked. A lot. And for about a year and a half, it was just me and him, 2 people rattling around in a house that used to need 3. I was 11 when he met Diane. Okay, here's the thing about Diane. She didn't come in like a villain. Nobody does, right? She came in nice. She was his coworker, she was pretty. She laughed at his jokes in this way that made him sit up straighter. And honestly, I didn't hate her. I was 11 and I missed having someone around. And she brought food, and she remembered I liked mint chip after I mentioned it once. She seemed fine. Good, even. Except, there was this thing she did with her eyes when she looked at the photos in our house. The wedding portrait over the fireplace. The one of my mom laughing in the garden. The strip of photo booth pictures on the fridge. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even discomfort, really. It was assessment. I was 11 and I clocked it anyway. I didn't have a word for it then. I do now. They got married when I was 12. Small wedding. Her sister, a few friends, my dad's family showing up mostly out of loyalty, I think, because nobody really knew what to make of how fast it all happened. My grandma, my mom's mom, didn't come. Said she wasn't feeling well. Even at 12, I knew that wasn't the real reason. I was a junior bridesmaid, pale yellow dress, picked out by Diane. I stood up there and watched my dad cry happy tears, and I really tried, to feel something good about it. 3 weeks after the honeymoon, the wedding portrait disappeared. I came downstairs on a Saturday and there was just a lighter square on the wall where it used to be. I went straight to my dad. "Where's the photo? The one of you and Mom?" He looked at me, then glanced toward the hallway, toward Diane, and said quiet, "We're going to redecorate, Leah. Fresh start. Diane and I talked about it." "Where did it go?" "Somewhere safe." "Where?" He didn't answer that one. He just went into the kitchen. I was 12. I'd lost my mom 3 years earlier, and the one person who was supposed to be my safe place just turned his back when I asked where her face had gone. That's the first time I felt that drop in my stomach, you know the one. The one that tells you something's wrong, and nobody's going to confirm it for you. It didn't happen all at once, that's almost the worst part. If she'd cleared everything out in one weekend, my dad would have noticed, would have had to say something. But she was patient. The big photos went first. Then the ones in the hallway. Then a picture of him and Mom hiking, sunburned, grinning, that used to sit on his desk. Then a little one I loved, Mom on a porch swing, looking off at something, looking peaceful, gone from the bookcase. Every time, same answers. "We're reorganizing. It's somewhere safe." And then, from Diane, this one. Gentle, calm, almost kind. It's a lot of photos of one person, Leah. It can make things feel heavy. She said it like she was helping me see something I was too young to get. Like I was the unreasonable one. I was 13, and I'd learned how to cry quietly enough that nobody in the house could hear me through the wall. If you've ever been gaslit by someone who does it so softly you almost feel guilty for being upset, you know exactly where this is going. My dad noticed some of it, I know he did. But Diane had this way of handling him that I didn't have a name for until I was older. She never argued with him, she redirected. If he seemed off, she'd acknowledge it for about 4 seconds, and then pivot to their future, what they were building. She made looking back feel like a kind of sickness, like missing my mom was something he needed to recover from, not something that just was. I just want you to be happy, Robert. Really happy. You deserve that. She said stuff like that constantly, small, reasonable sounding. And over years, it rewired how he saw his own grief, turned it into a weakness, into the thing standing between him and being okay. I watched my dad become a slightly different person in real time, and I had no language for what I was seeing. I was just a kid who missed her mom, watching the woman who replaced her slowly convince my father that missing her was the actual problem. Around year 2, the heirlooms started going. My mom had this jewelry box, wood, little mirror inside, a ballerina that spun when you opened the lid. I used to lie on her bed and just watch it go. Mostly costume jewelry inside, but a few real things. A locket from her mom, a charm bracelet with these tiny silver shoes. One day I went looking for it. Not in the guest room closet where Dad had moved it. Not anywhere. I asked him and, I'll never forget this, he went pale. Just for a second. Said he'd ask Diane. He never got back to me. I asked again 2 weeks later. He said maybe it went to the attic. It wasn't in the attic. I checked. I'm telling you this calmly now, but at 14 I was not calm. I was furious and devastated and completely stuck, because nobody would just look at me and admit something was happening. Has that ever happened to you? Knowing, with total certainty, that something's wrong in your own house, and having zero way to prove it? That's its own kind of grief. Nobody talks about that one. I need to tell you about my grandma, Ellen, my mom's mom. Her house was the opposite of ours. Photos everywhere. A whole wall in the hallway just for my mom. School pictures, prom, graduation, her wedding day. Every time I walked in there I could just breathe again. Diane never said she hated those visits. She just made them smaller, shorter. Family stuff on her side, activities on weekends, little scheduling things that piled up into something big. By 15, I was seeing Grandma Ellen maybe 4 times a year instead of every other weekend. She called me once, I was 16, and just said, quiet. She's erasing her, Leah. You know that, right? I know, Grandma. And neither of us knew what to do with that. Because how do you fight something that happens in 100 tiny moments, none of which would sound like anything if you said them out loud, one at a time? There's one night I think about more than any other. I was 16. My dad and Diane were out for dinner, and I decided, I don't know why, maybe I just needed to do something, to look for that jewelry box one more time. Basement, attic, garage. In the garage, shoved behind some shelves, there was a cardboard box. I opened it. A framed photo from the beach. A decorative plate that used to hang in the kitchen. A scarf, and it still smelled like her. After all those years, it still smelled like her. I sat on the cold garage floor holding that scarf for I don't know how long. Then I heard the car pull in. I put everything back exactly the way I found it and went inside. And I never told a single person what I'd seen. Because I was 16, and I already understood, instinctively, that if I said anything, the box would just disappear. It did. Within a month, it was gone. She must have checked, She must have known. I sometimes wonder if she saw it in my face after that I looked at her differently. College was the first time in years I could breathe. I went 4 hours away, and moving into that dorm room, I remember just standing there thinking, I get to be a person for 9 months. I called my dad. He sounded happy, or whatever version of happy Diane had decided was acceptable for him. He never brought up Mom, hadn't in years. It was like she'd quietly become a topic that wasn't allowed in the house anymore. I called Grandma Ellen every Sunday. And Ellen was the one who told me about the storage unit. She'd heard it from a neighbor, Patrice, who used to live down our street. Patrice had seen Diane making trips with boxes years back, assumed it was just decluttering. But something about how many trips and how careful Diane was about it, always doing it alone, early in the morning, it stuck with her. She's been renting a storage unit, Grandma told me. I think that's where it all went. I went very still. What kind of things? I don't know, baby. But Patrice said she was always alone, always early. I sat on that for years. What was I going to do? I had no proof, no access, and my dad trusted Diane completely. If I'd confronted her with nothing, I'd have just been the unstable, grieving stepdaughter. So I waited. I didn't know it would be 6 more years. It started, of all things, with a fender bender. Nobody hurt. Diane ran a red light. The other driver wanted insurance info. She opened the glove box and a little key fell out. She grabbed it fast, but the other guy, older man, sharp eyes, saw it. Mentioned, just making conversation, that it looked like a storage unit key. Diane brushed it off. But she came home rattled. And my dad, he'd found that same key on the floor of the car while cleaning it out that week, asked her about it. What's this from? Oh, old storage unit, from years ago. Forgot I even had it. Nothing in there, just some furniture. Which facility? I don't remember. I'll look it up. She never did. And something in my dad just shifted. Small but real. He started paying attention. Went through their bank statements and found it. Monthly charges to a place called Secure Space, 15 miles away, going back over a decade. He'd never noticed. Or he had, and assumed it was something boring. Business storage, whatever. He called me that night. His voice was wrong. Leah, I need you to come home this weekend. I didn't ask why. Something in how he said it told me not to. I just got in the car. Diane was at her sister's. My dad had arranged that on purpose, which I'd genuinely never seen him do before. Be strategic, in his own house. That alone told me how serious this was. He laid the bank statements out on the kitchen table. 14 years. Every single month. I'm going to go look, he said. I want you there. We drove out Saturday morning. He'd called ahead, said he was on the account. They let us in. I will never, ever forget walking down that row of orange metal doors. Unit 14. His hands were shaking when he put the key in. He pulled the door up. I had to grab the wall. It was floor to ceiling with my mother's life. Framed photos stacked in rows, wrapped in moving blankets. Boxes in Diane's handwriting. And right on top of the first stack, the first thing I saw was my grandmother's jewelry box. The one with the ballerina. I started crying before I even stepped inside. My dad just stood in the doorway. Didn't say anything for a long time. I watched his face do something I don't have a good way to describe, like watching someone finish a puzzle and realize what the picture actually is. We went in slowly. Christmas ornaments, our ornaments, the ones with dates written on the back in my mom's handwriting. The decorative plate. The scarf. The beach photo. Things I'd been told didn't exist. Things I'd searched the whole house for. And then, near the back, a box of photos I'd never seen in my life. My mom pregnant. Their first apartment. Wedding reception shots that never made it into an album. And one photo. My mom holding me as a newborn, hair a mess, smiling so big it almost doesn't look like a posed picture at all. I sat down on that concrete floor and held it and just couldn't breathe. My dad sat down next to me. And this huge, quiet man, who I had not seen cry in 15 years, put his face in his hands and sobbed. I'm not going to skip past that part because I think it matters. He cried for a long time. I just sat with him. There wasn't anything to say. The woman who was supposed to help him through his grief had spent over a decade weaponizing it, convincing him that missing his wife was a flaw, quietly boxing up everything that proved she'd ever existed, and locking it 15 miles away so he'd stay exactly where she needed him, tethered to her, because she'd made sure she was the only thing left that felt like his present. It was control, dressed up as moving on, and he believed it, for 14 years. I could have been angry at him, I had been for a long time, but sitting on that floor, watching him understand what had been done to all three of us, I just felt heartbroken. For everyone. When Diane got home Sunday night, my dad was sitting at the kitchen table. I was there too. He asked me to stay. She walked in and read the room instantly. You could see her recalibrate, that tiny shift people do when they sense danger. Her smile didn't drop exactly. It just stiffened. What's going on? He slid the storage key across the table. She looked at it. At him. At me. Robert, I need you to explain what's in that unit. And, to her credit, or maybe not, she tried. Talked about how hard it was, living in a house full of someone else's face every day. Said she'd never felt like she could bring it up. Said she always meant to give it back when the time was right. 14 years. She'd been waiting for it the right time for 14 years. My dad let her finish. Then, the jewelry box was her grandmother's. Leah asked me about it when she was 14. I told her I didn't know where it was. Diane looked at me. The baby pictures, her first Christmas ornament, the dress Carol brought her home from the hospital in. Leah searched this house for those. For years, Diane. The fridge was the loudest thing in the room. You let me watch my daughter grieve something you had locked in a box. For 14 years. She left that night, went to her sister's. There were weeks of stuff after that. Counseling, lawyers, things that weren't mine to be part of. But the next morning, my dad drove to Grandma Ellen's with a whole car full of framed photos and stayed for 3 hours. Ellen called me that night, crying. He brought her back, Leah. He brought Carol home. The divorce was final about 8 months later. I'm not going to pretend my dad became a totally different person overnight. That's not how it works. He'd spent 14 years being slowly shaped by someone who needed him smaller. You don't undo that in one season. But I watched him try. He hung the wedding portrait back up, in his bedroom this time. The beach photo went in the living room. He started calling Grandma Ellen more. On what would have been my mom's birthday, a day that hadn't existed in our house in over a decade, he called me and just said, I lit a candle for your mom today. I had to pull the car over. The hardest conversation, though, that wasn't with Diane. It was with my dad, about a year later. We were on his back porch, summer, iced tea, not saying much. And then, I failed you. I started to say something, it wasn't your fault, and he just stopped me. Let me say it. I know what you're going to say, and maybe some of it wasn't on me, but I stopped asking questions because it was easier, because she made it easier. And you were 12, Leah. 12, searching this house for your mother's things, and I didn't do enough to find them for you. I let that sit there for a second. I should have fought harder for your memories of her. You deserved that. There are things you spend your whole life waiting to hear without knowing you're waiting. That was one of them for me. I understand, I told him. I was angry. And then I had to decide. Stay angry, or let myself love you again. I chose to love you again. I keep choosing it. He nodded. His eyes were wet. I'm going to spend whatever time I've got left being worth that. I want to talk about the jewelry box for a second, because I promised myself I would. Going through everything from the unit, I got to it last. Bottom of a bin. I opened it, and the ballerina spun. A little wobbly, like the spring was tired, but she spun. The locket was there. The charm bracelet with the tiny silver shoes. And at the very bottom, wrapped in a scrap of felt, something I'd never seen. A note. My mom's handwriting. For Leah, when she's older. These are from the women who loved you before you were even you. Keep them somewhere safe. They're yours. She wrote that before she died. Wrapped those pieces, knowing, she might not be the one to hand them to me. She was reaching forward through time to give me something. Diane almost intercepted it. Almost. I'll be honest, because that's the deal I made with myself for this video. I don't actually know what Diane was feeling. I've turned it over a lot. Jealousy? Insecurity? Maybe she genuinely couldn't live in a house that felt like a shrine and just handled it as badly as a person possibly could. Maybe some of it was human, at the root. But she knew. She had to know a kid was looking for those things. She had to know what that jewelry box meant. She had to know those baby photos couldn't be replaced. And she did it anyway, quietly, for over a decade. That's not someone who was struggling. That's someone who decided her comfort mattered more than a child's grief. I've made peace with maybe never understanding her. That was never really the point. The point is, I have the box now. The photos. The locket. The note. She didn't erase my mom. She just delayed her. And Mom still got there. Grandma Ellen passed 18 months ago. 81. Went quietly, in her sleep, in the house my mom grew up in. At her memorial, I brought the jewelry box. Set it on a table by her photo, left it open. Let the ballerina do her slow, tired little spin. A woman named Patricia, knew my mom since they were teenagers, saw it and just stopped walking. That's Carol's. Yeah, I said. Grandma had it. She looked at me for a long moment. You look so much like her, you know that? I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She'd be proud of you. I genuinely believe that. I carried that home with me like it was something I could break. My dad's doing better now. Real therapy, the kind where you actually have to look at yourself, which I know was not easy for him. He retired from the company where he met Diane, took up woodworking in the garage, of all things, made a picture frame. There's a photo of my mom in it now, on the mantle. Every time I visit and see her face there, in that house, in the spot it was always supposed to be, something in me just loosens. Something that had been held tight for a very long time. So if you grew up somewhere your past got managed for you, where someone else decided which memories you were allowed to keep, which parts of your history were too heavy, I need you to hear this. They don't get to decide that. They never did. Your memories are yours. The people who loved you before are still yours. Nobody gets to curate your grief or ration out your own past to you. And if you're sitting there right now recognizing pieces of your story in mine, I hope you find your storage unit. Whatever it is. I hope you find what they put away. Because it's yours. It always was. My mom was 34 when she died. She braided my hair on Sunday mornings. She laughed like it surprised her every time. And before she left, she wrote a note so that someday, her daughter would know exactly who that jewelry came from. She was reaching forward through time. She made it. Hi Mom. I've got your things. I'm keeping them safe. Thanks for being here.